Hi guys, I'm Chris, the founder of Innerfit, and in partnership with London Tech Week, the man bringing you some health tips, practical steps you can take to basically feel well and work well. Everyone's in a really different situation right now. Lots of us working remotely, but regardless of what that situation looks like, it's very much different to what it was a few months ago. So health and well-being has never been so important. It really can fit as the foundation of almost everything else in life, which is why we're working in partnership to bring you some bite-sized content on topics like movement, healthy habits, and a few other bits and bobs to really help you feel well and work well. Today's topic is about movement and mental fitness. Right now, it's a real struggle to get as much movement in if we're working remotely, and that can impact how we feel in terms of our mental health and our mental well-being. So, quick way of introduction to, as the person to talk to you about that, I suppose what qualifies me and who am I? As the founder of Innerfit, I actually did work previously in strategy consulting and then sports marketing. So I kind of had a black and white contrast of working all the hours under the sun with actually finishing work at 5:30 p.m. and then qualified as a coach and personal trainer, and subsequently I've gathered a bunch of friends across neuroscience, nutrition, all types of different things to essentially realise that our movement is incredibly linked to our mental fitness. Talking with people one-to-one in coaching relationships, but also to all those different experts, movement really sits as a foundation, a pillar. It's not the answer for everything, but that is what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to rattle through a few questions that I typically get asked in terms of what is the link between movement and mental health, what are the factors that underpin that in terms of stress and cognitive performance and depression and anxiety, for instance. And then we're going to get onto what are the practical steps that you can take, I can take, to actually boost our movement and subsequently mental health. So without further ado, what do we mean by the term mental health, or perhaps switching the wording and language, mental fitness? The reason for that switch is because that language often resonates a lot more with the people I've spoken to. Mental health, I think, has connotations. Sometimes, and it's no fault of our own, there can be quite negative associations. And that's because the literature has focused on that. If you look at the science behind mental health research, it's often about the absence of depression, the absence of stress and anxiety. We'll come on to stress in a second because it's not quite that simple, but the language that really seems to resonate and truly reflect the full spectrum we're really thinking about here is mental fitness. Just like a muscle, you can see muscles, you train them, they grow if you work, your heart increases in size, stroke volume goes up if you train cardiovascular wise. It's exactly the same for our brain, yet we kind of forget about this. And in terms of cognitive performance at the end, memory, creativity, the ability to perform well at your job, that's really what we're talking about here. Mental health is not just the absence of sickness, it can be the presence of being the best version of you can be, which is really something we all want to aspire to. We can't do it consistently, we will go through waves, but that's really what we're talking about here when we talk about mental fitness. So, how is movement linked to that mental fitness? Well, in a number of ways, and it's worth noting at the beginning now that it can be really difficult to take care of both of those, especially whilst working remotely. It's not the answer. Nutrition is a massive factor as well. Of course, if you are really struggling, it's always worth thinking about contacting your GP. But movement can be part of the answer. It's been proven that for low to mild cases of depression, exercise and physical activity can be as effective as some antidepressants. And so what we're going to focus on today is very much that. So for stress, for example, stress can be good or bad, but movement can really help with that. Studies have shown that in the long run, people that are physically active are able to manage stress a lot better. Equally, the feeling of relaxation and that runner's high that you might have heard about, the endorphins released that you get after an exercise session or even during it, very much associated with that feeling of pleasure, but also relaxation. So yoga, for instance, you might have heard of a term called GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid. Research has shown that that's released and that's associated with that sense of relaxation. You've also got BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So it's big words. There's more big words because there's a process called exercise-induced neurogenesis, which is associated again with exercise. The reason I share those big words and now simplify them down is basically to say that exercise is linked to hitting a bit of a reset button. It's that sense of calm that you might have after exercising or physical activity. Different people can get it from different things. So we're covering a little bit there of stress and anxiety. In terms of depression, again, the research has been pretty overwhelming over the last few decades from all different areas of the world. I've actually met with someone at King's College in London and spoken about this, and the number of research papers that would have to be released to basically disprove this link is in the thousands, talking to one of those experts. And you can also then think about a study coming out of the US in recent years, which basically looked at about 300,000 of the population and said that, yeah, again, negative correlation. And if you wanted to put a financial value on that, they almost equated it to past a certain threshold of income, $25,000 was the financial amount that equated to the difference in happiness for people who are physically active versus physically inactive. So it's an interesting way of looking at things, and it's obviously not too precise, but if you're thinking about how much physical activity matters for our mental health and happiness, and you're wanting to put a financial number on that, past the threshold, $25,000 is what they came up with, so absolutely amazing number. In terms of cognitive performance then, and creativity, the research again has shown that you are way more likely to have creative ideas if you are walking rather than sitting. So I'm delivering this now while standing up, I can move around. You feel different when you're standing up. So if you're watching this sitting down right now, what could you do? Maybe you can stand, maybe you can start to move those shoulders. Just get a bit of blood flowing, because the rationale goes, you've got more blood flowing, you've got more oxygen being carried around by that blood, and more oxygen is feeding into that brain. So if you're sitting down right now and you're a bit hunched over, which can be a lot of the time, a lot of us can have this kyphosis kind of form in the upper back, in the back. Correcting that with some backward shoulder circles can really help. And again, that's going to allow up to 10 to 20% more oxygen into those lungs through the body. Big thing, but really, really simple to correct. And in terms of memory, again, research shows that's impacted. And finally, closing on the link between mental fitness and movement, this idea of performance, of flow states. You might well have read about these flow states, and in Silicon Valley, lots of research being done on how to access them. What I mean by flow state, by the way, is this sense of being fully immersed in a task. It's of your own choosing. It's just difficult enough to push you to the edge of your capabilities without pushing you over. And it's a state in which you lose all sense of time. You can lose all sense of who you are, sense of self, and researchers for the last few decades have basically said that, look, this flow state is desirable. The more time in your life you can spend in a flow state, the happier your life is going to be. So again, so much more information we could share at the moment. There's an amazing book called Stealing Fire, which talks about Silicon Valley and a few other things, but again, well worth reading into. So why does all of this matter? We've covered a little bit in terms of mental fitness and what that can mean in terms of spectrum and the absence of sickness, as well as the presence of performance and other areas. We've talked a little bit about the links between movement and mental fitness, from stress to anxiety, cognitive performance, and the specifics around that. I suppose the last final question is, what practical steps can you actually take, especially whilst working remotely, to boost your movement and mental fitness? Really depends on you. Everyone is different, everyone enjoys different types of physical activity, so research around walking versus gym and aerobic exercise, cycling, yoga and Tai Chi, team sports, roughly in a paper from 2018, all came around a 20% improvement, or wording it slightly differently, reduced likelihood of experiencing depression. So all of those types of activity roughly equate to the same thing, and there's different stories around each of them. So the team sports, for example, The longest ever longitudinal study into human happiness found that relationships are perhaps the single biggest factor underpinning a quality, happy life. So team sports can definitely be a positive aspect. Similarly, yoga and Tai Chi, researchers found that coordinated movement is really associated with memory function and sustaining that through life. So it really depends on you. The last point I'd make on what type is find the activity you enjoy. If you enjoy it, you're going to release more dopamine. If you release more dopamine, you're more likely to continue and repeat that behavior. It's that reward system in the body which essentially helps us create habits. Dopamine obviously does a lot of other things, but one of its functions can be for you to continue to build those habits. So everyone enjoys different things. The number of times people have come up to me and said, I need to run, I need to get into running. I'm like, do you like running? No. Same for the gym. I need to get into the gym, I need to get back in there. Why? Do you like the gym? No. Choose what you like and you are so much more likely to continue on doing it and build healthy habits in terms of movement. Okay, so clearly exercise can be good for you, but too much can be detrimental to your mental health and mental fitness. So definitely worth thinking about how much is enough and how much is the right amount. The first thing I'd say on this is anything is infinitely better than nothing. One of the big questions I typically get asked is like, if it's not 45 minutes or an hour, is there any point? Yes, the answer to that question is resoundingly. Even if you can just get 10 minutes in and you're thinking about productivity, say in an hour, every 50 minutes you get up, stand, walk, that's going to boost your productivity and it's just a small section of time. In terms of the month and what that looks like, research in a paper in 2018 found that between 12 and 20 sessions was kind of the range for most people, which reduced the mental health burden to like lower levels. And when I say mental health burden, I essentially mean bad mental health days. So there's a long range around that, of course, because everyone is different. That's a really important point to acknowledge. Go and experiment and find out your sweet spot there. In terms of what that looks like, it's an inverted U shape. So the research showed that your mental health burden is going to reduce as your physical activity increases, and it's going to level out. And then obviously you can have too much exercise. So if you're trying to exercise every day, you could be risking that burnout scenario where your body can't handle it anymore and your mental state catches up with that as well. So in terms of how much, number of days in the month, that's what we're working with. In terms of specific session, there's a lot of research around the first 25 minutes. The reference I just made to that research paper about 12 to 20 sessions in a month also showed that 45 minutes was a bit of a sweet spot on length of a single session. That said, again, the first 20 minutes, first 25 minutes can really have a big impact. And again, anything is infinitely better than nothing in terms of movement and physical activity. So do what you can, work around your schedule, and as much as possible, try and schedule it in. One of the big effective things I've seen working with people over the last 5 years has been literally putting your physical activity first, literally putting your health first in the diary. So whether that's on the Sunday evening and you're putting it in the calendar or later on in the week, where can you find the space to get that movement in, and then can you honor it? I'm a firm believer that you have most of the answers within yourself. We can go on to habits, and we will do in another session, but I really do believe that right now in your head you've probably got all the answers you need. You've got the bright spots in the past that were going really well when you were moving well. What was happening then? Was it because you set an alarm that said at 3 p.m. you need to get up and move around a little bit? Was it because you had a buddy sitting opposite you in the office who could catch you out and say, look, Chris, you're slouching again. Let's do those backward shoulder circles. Was it that you were commuting each day and so you had your 10,000 steps in the bag without even thinking about it? And I suppose that's an interesting one, because while we're working remotely, we want to try and find ways to recreate that scenario. Walking, yoga, cardiovascular activity, resistance training and strength work, agility, mobility, flexibility, all of these words, all of these different types of fitness and movement will form part of a good balanced workout routine and really underpin your mental fitness. So without going into too much detail, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to say, yes, you do have the answers inside your head. You can dig around. And I just really, as a final concluding point, just invite you to spend 60 seconds, get the pen, get paper, have a little brainstorm down on that and think about, okay, what could I do? And what is the one positive commitment I'm going to make right now to boost my movement and mental fitness from today onwards? What is that one positive action?